If you're working with complex assets inside Katana, then utilizing deferred loading is a great way to be able to work with those larger projects without the risk of being slowed down. But sometimes you may want to be able to view certain assets or certain parts of your scene without it being necessary to load the entire heavy geometry. In these cases, it can be really useful to work with low poly versions of your assets, so you can still get a good idea of the layout of your scene without being slowed down. You could use graph state variables to switch between different resolution versions of your assets, but this may not be the best workflow for you if you want to render the full res version while viewing the low res version in the viewer. So I'm going to show you how to load low resolution geometry to an unexpanded scene graph location by setting an attribute on that location defining what to load. This is a workflow for Alembics, so if you are working with USD, then proxy geometry can be included in the USD file itself and then selected in the display settings of the viewer, along with any other purposes that may be included. So I have a dragon asset which is fairly high poly, and you can imagine if I have multiple assets like this in the scene, then it would become pretty heavy pretty quick, and it might make the scene difficult to work with. I also have this low res version of the dragon, which is much lighter. So what we can do is create a location somewhere here that, when expanded to that location, will load the low res, low poly version of this geometry. I can create this location from inside the Alembic in node parameters where I've brought the dragon in. So here I can add one or more locations. So I'll add a dragon proxy location and then a dragon location for the full version to load under. And I'll just do the same for the eye geometry as well. And now I just need to set the attribute. So I can use an attribute set node for this. And I'll drag the dragon proxy location into the path. And then the name of the attribute that I want to set is the proxies.viewer attribute, which is a string. And I can enter the path to the low res Alembic. I'm going to use an expression in this case because I know where the low res version is in relation to this project. But you can also just copy and paste the file path here. And now when I collapse the scene graph to this location that I've set the attribute on, then the low poly version will be loaded in. And if I expand to the next location, we can see the bounding box information, and under that is the full res geometry. So we have a lot of control over what we need to view at any point in time. And if I set off a render while still expanded to this location, then the high res geometry is the one that's being rendered and the low res version isn't. So I can be working with this light, low poly version in the viewer and always be sure that it won't be what's seen in the renders. I can now set up my lights or do whatever I need inside the scene without being slowed down by this heavy geometry and also without having everything collapsed in the scene graph. And this is really great, especially if you're working with the lighting tools. So if you're moving and dragging lights around, as you need to have some geometry loaded in order to place lights in relation to your objects in the scene.